Time to put your Galleons where your mouth is. By Tsume Yuki. Chapter 16. The Right Thing. Is he an idiot? James stared down at the newspaper in horrified awe, somewhat glad that Sirius had decided to sleep in today. That would give the rest of the Marauders a chance to put their heads together and figure out how they were going to break this news to the Grim Animagus. Because no matter how they went about it, it wouldn't be pretty. They just needed to figure out the way to inform Sirius of this latest development in a way that saved Hogwarts from collateral damage. Looking around the Great Hall, James did his best to memorize everyone's reaction to the news, and for good reason. After all, it's not every day a runaway student pops up on the front page calling out the Dark Lord of their time for a duel! Professor Slughorn, who'd been the professor to treasure Turais Black above all other students, looking as if he wanted to be sick, whilst their very own head of house looked like she wanted to reach through the picture of Turais and start strangling him with her bare hands. Understandable. James' mother would kill him if he even joked about demanding a duel from the Dark Lord, never mind doing it seriously and on the front of the biggest newspaper in magical England. Over at the Slytherin table, it was a mixed bag. A few seemed genuinely excited now that it seemed like the figureheads of their house were going to be going against one another one to one, whilst a good few were looking like they were going to throw up. But it was Sirius's little brother, Regulus, that really caught James' attention. His gray eyes were wide, staring down at the paper with complete horror across his face. James could never understand the brotherly relationship that the two young blacks had with their eldest brother. James liked the other teen well enough. He was always a good laugh and always answered his questions, regardless of if it were homework or Filch's nightly patrol schedule. Turais was cool for a black, an older black at that, but he'd never have the close relationship that Sirius and Regulus shared with the older boy, nor did he want it. Sure, a sibling would have been cool, but James felt he was more the big brother type. He'd have wanted a little sibling to look after, not an older brother to look after him. What is he doing? He'd been so shocked by the news, he hadn't even noticed the beautiful Lily Evans seating herself across from him. James swallowed loudly. Lily looked up to Turais Black more than the usual student did. He'd overheard her talking to another girl, saying how she wished her sister would love her as unconditionally as Turais loved his brothers. James had gagged at that, but it was true. Even when Turais had caught Sirius pranking Snivelus, the teen had looked more upset with Sirius's actions rather than Sirius himself. Evans called them childish, and perhaps they were. Maybe they should grow up a bit. Sirius seemed to be doing so. He hadn't pulled a single prank since Turais had left. It just didn't seem right if the oldest black brother wasn't there to enjoy the after effects. And he always did. A dreadful noise brought him back to the present, and James looked up, eyebrow rising up at the sight of Evans. There were tears in her eyes as she looked at the front page of the Daily Prophet, and belatedly James realized that terrified whimper must have come from her. He's going to get himself killed. No, he's not. Sirius dropped into a seat beside them, snatching up a slice of toast and slathering it with butter. James could only stare at the boy's calm appearance, even though he'd put a very crumpled newspaper on the table already, having clearly read the news they were all talking about. Regulus had gotten up and come over now, slowly sliding into the free space between Lily and Sirius, still white as a sheet and hands trembling. He called out, "He who must not be named Sirius!" Voldemort. The three of them turned to look at the little Slytherin second year who was currently pouring milk into a cereal bowl. No Gryffindor dared to push the youngest black away from their table, not since Turais had left, and Regulus had been coming to sit with Sirius almost every day. Almost as if they expected Turais to be summoned the second someone slighted one of his brothers. James wasn't entirely sure their fear was baseless either. Turais, or the Otter Umbra, as he was now known, was after all making a bit of a reputation for himself. No one wanted to lose their wand hand, even if they felt Turais wouldn't raise his wand against a student of Hogwarts. The summer holidays, though, would make them fair game, so no one bothered Regulus or Sirius. Turais said to always say the name, that it's not really his name, and to be afraid of it makes it seem like Voldemort's won. Sirius gave several solemn nods, an effect ruined by his bulging cheeks as he squirreled away toast as if he were a small rodent. Turais will be fine. He's been performing wandless magic since he was really little. He's never really failed anything before, and if he thinks he could take on the Dark Lord, then he can take on a Voldemort and win. James didn't dare smile at Sirius's words, because even though the boy clearly believed them, it didn't stop the fear and worry leaking into his eyes. You're really going after him, aren't you? Turais paused in his steps, shoulders tensing, and Lucius Malfoy allowed himself a small smile. He flexed the fingers on his left hand, watching as the pale, unmarred skin of his left forearm rippled with the muscles beneath it. He'd been scared when he read about the Black Heir systematically taking down every Death Eater thrown his way, and never getting seriously injured, not once. It wasn't until Rodolphus went down that Lucius really started to see the Black Heir for what he was. He'd been jealous of him for such a long time, watched as he shot to the top of the Slytherin hierarchy and ripped apart their usual behavior, watched as he stood up for anyone and everyone, unafraid of what he would face as a result. He'd once thought that the only reason Turais Black had ever made it into Slytherin was because he could talk to snakes. He knew better now. The boy was ruthless when he was endangered, but when his brothers or anyone else he held dear threatened, he became a merciless machine with only one goal: to protect. And if that meant having to take on a Dark Lord to protect those close to him, he would do it, with not even a pinch of hesitation. The boy's resourcefulness was only matched by his ambition to keep his loved ones safe, and it was perhaps the purest ambition Slytherin House had seen in a very long time. He had married Narcissa for love, because he adored and worshipped her, and by doing this, he'd brought himself under the umbrella of Turais Black's protection, unknowingly, of course, but he was still here. And now he was no longer a marked man carrying out orders he hadn't truly believed in anymore. He wasn't daft. He knew that Turais would have caught up to him no matter how much he tried to hide, had he turned down the younger boy's offer. He wasn't stupid, though. He knew that the younger Black wouldn't stop until the Dark Lord was dead, and he was more than happy to ally himself with the younger boy, if only to survive the oncoming hurricane. I suggest you put your manor on lockdown. Voldemort does not like traitors, but without the mark and the manor on lockdown, he won't be able to get in. Not without a few days to tear down the wards anyway, and he'll want to duel with me before he starts chasing you. He won't walk away from my duel. The boy stood up, rolling his shoulders before turning to Narcissa. His beautiful wife had sat beside him, holding his hand through the painful mark removal process. She was the most lovely creature he'd ever come across. Narcissa, I assume you still kept up your medical studies? I have a burn that's been cursed, so I can't heal it myself. Watching as Turais rolled up his sleeve, Lucius grimaced at the wound. That looked like it hurt. Clearly, Bellatrix had not gone down quietly. From the glistening of Narcissa's gray eyes, she was running along the same line of thought that Lucius was. Nevertheless, she drew her wand, gently wrapping her fingers around Turais' wrist so that she could get a closer look at the burnt flesh. Lucius was still amazed the boy wasn't lying on the floor somewhere. It had been 3 days since Bellatrix's arrest, and the boy had put up with that wound for 3 days until he could come to find them for whatever it was he was doing. His pain tolerance was ridiculous. More than once, Lucius had played with the idea that Narcissa's cousin was not human, but never had he actually seriously considered it. Not until now. He watched as Turais' eyes flashed a brilliant green and looked so world-weary, so tired and utterly inhuman. Narcissa may have missed it, but Lucius did not. And in that moment, he knew he'd done the right thing.